two things that I want to talk about in this video. And by the way, thank you for hanging out with me. This is the soldier here. I'm excited to be here over the next few minutes with you, and I hope that you will enjoy this. And if you're not subscribed, I pray that you will subscribe to this ministry and ask me how you can support. If you love helping and you have a heart of empathy and sympathy, you want to join this community in giving, you can just let me know. And I'm always going to respond, always. So thank you ahead of time. We're talking about two things here: being curious about yourself and we working with people. We live in a world today where there's people, right? We are what we call gregarious people. We generally like to be around others. Sometimes it gets difficult in life, and we begin to retract a little bit. And again, those are signs that show up when you feel like retracting from people. You should not just retract from people, even though you can, and maybe you should for a little bit, but you should be asking, what is the purpose of this pain? What is the purpose of this suffering that I'm going through right now, that I'm growing through? You have to be very careful who you open yourself up to. You make yourself vulnerable, because if you make yourself vulnerable to the wrong person, what can happen to you? What can happen with that information, that data that you give that person? It's becoming more difficult to find truth, to find accountability. It's becoming more difficult to talk about things that are really, really important. Things that are what are important? Spiritual things, the invisible things, right? Your psyche, your emotional, what we call EQ, emotional, or EI, emotional intelligence. We're all on a path. We are all on a journey. Some of us self-reflect more. Some of us understand this journey. We understand ourselves a lot better because we're on this journey of healing. And that's why I said the first section of this video, and I really don't want to emphasize too much, but we understand that if you make yourself vulnerable, you need to make yourself vulnerable to the right person. I would be very much in prayer, trying my best to educate myself, because sometimes we just open up to the wrong people. We've done that. And that, it comes to haunt you if you don't put a stop to that. Making yourself vulnerable. And again, there's times that you need to do that. We need help. Yes, we like autonomy, self-autonomy. We like to be able to make our own decisions and do things and build and imagine and create. A lot of that's been stuffed in most of us, just completely stuffed. Because, first of all, childhood foundation had a big interruption. I know it did in my life. Way early on it started. The trauma wounds that I still carry with me today started very early on in life. But then again, I've stepped into environments that have actually caused further damage to some of those wounds that I've had, that I thought maybe healed, that I didn't even know I have. Sometimes trauma, uh, the the presence of trauma, or the concussion, you can call it the concussion of a trauma wound will show up later on. It's not something that has to be instantly, especially when you're a child. You're getting through all of that because you're you're not focused on that. You don't really understand the depth of some of these pains and traumas and things that you're facing. You know, the insecurities, the when you're not acknowledged as a child, when you're not, you know, when you're not actually acknowledged, and that can be, there's a whole lot to that, right? You're a child and you're not acknowledged effectively as much as possible, as two people could possibly do their very best with you. That's not happening today in the majority of homes. I know, again, it didn't happen. It wasn't happening when I was a child. So that's my warning on that. The other thing that I want to talk about is just be curious about yourself. Why be curious? Well, think about it. What would happen to you if you became curious about you? What would begin? And this is something that's interesting. Again, not everyone's going to even want to attempt to do this, but when you look at your life and you look at, like, for instance, again, the pain, or you look at something that makes you happy, right? How often do you really stop and look at these things that make you happy? How often do you do that? We need to do that more. How often do we stop and reflect when we're going through something that's difficult, right? How often do you reflect? Curiosity, why is this happening to me, right? It may be something very, very painful. And you come to realize that the more curious you become about yourself, the more you realize that some of these things that you're facing, that you're going through, growing through, are actually needed. They're like little markers on the road, points of interest, I call them, POIs, dummy lights on the dashboard, if you will. When you become curious, you see these things, or you got a pain of some kind, a scar, something happened, and it intrigues you, right? There's people that have had illnesses. They knew that something was wrong. There's cases out there. There have been studies, and there's cases about this. If you Google or go to Chat GPT, you can learn about people that have just ignored themselves. They knew that something was wrong, but yet they ignored themselves. In fact, I know a family member that passed away recently. And of course, God is in control of all of that. But yet, for many months, this man was ill. He knew he was ill because he was going to the bathroom and he could see what was actually being discharged. And he ignored for about 4 months, I think, 4 or 5 months. And then when he went to the hospital, he was at a stage 5 cancer. We're going to take this up with another session, and we'll do video number 2. So I look forward to sharing more about this, but be curious. Be curious. Leave me a comment, like and share, and let me know how you want to support this mission. Let me know how you want to support, and we can work together because I need your support also. Thank you.